Today's show is going to be a little bit like the Northern Line at about 8:30 in the morning. It's going to be like crazy bonkers. I've had to take the splint off. It's just been driving me crazy. I'll put it back on in a bit. But for those of you who are being kind enough to ask, this is it. What can I do? I can do that. I can just about do that. And that's the only movement I've got. Fantastic. Now, what was I going to say? Before we start, a very, very, very special friend of mine died this week in Los Angeles. Her name was Shirley Green, and it behooves me just to say how much so many of us are going to miss her. She was a total legend, an extraordinary woman, incredibly kind to me. I stayed with her in LA. If I wasn't staying with Chantal, I'd be staying with her in Woodland Hills, which is an area of Los Angeles. And I stayed with her for weeks on end, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed. She was an amazing person. And the world is a little less bright, less entertaining, and less charming without the great Shirley Green. I could talk about her for hours, but I won't. She was just absolutely extraordinary. Let's say hello to some people. Let's dash across straight away to New York State. He's Don Brown. He doesn't talk like that. And then it's time for the flash. Good afternoon, Russell and Law. And clockmaker to the which is clockmaker. I don't know any other clockmakers. Robert Van Buren. You know him. You've grown to love him. He can't walk down the streets of New Malden without being mobbed now. It is, of course, Neil Lowe.
Greetings and good afternoon.
I'm in a different area. I can't keep up.
Indeed. Now, this is the kind of thing that goes on at Shay Long. I have a friend here that very kindly jet washed some bits for me and jet washed all the mud off.
You just have a bath like everybody else.
I then decided to jet wash the plants to water them and put the mud back. There we go.
You did.
Demonstrating the art of continuous motion. It was.
Hey, good news for you, Neil. I've just had a flash. I'm not joking. Just trying to come. Hooters, which if you know anything about American culture, you know what Hooters is.
I know what Hooters is. Absolutely.
It's opening up in the UK. I can't believe it. You must be kidding me.
New Malden.
Well, it's probably in your house. Hooters. How can I put this politely? Only employs waitresses with massive whammers. That's it.
Oh.
That is it. It is as sexist as you could possibly get. If you watch any episodes of Family Guy, and I'm addicted to Family Guy, have been for years.
I do.
You were, I say Neil.
I don't know how they get away
they're always
with it.
doing gags about Hooters. I can't believe they're opening up in the UK. What is it, 1973? They're bringing back Benny Hill. Jesus Christ, what a farce. We've got a million. What have we got here? We've got
an incredible show today. Really
unbelievable. Everybody apart from Michael Bublé's on the show. Good afternoon, gents, says Luke Newman. More good news. I've been shortlisted for a Make a Difference Award for BBC Three Counties. Get you.
Actually, while we're doing shout-outs, do you remember our guest Richie Vince the other day?
Richie Vince.
The rocker.
Yeah, of course.
He's got a brand new radio show, been promoted, and happened in the last few days. So shout out, Richie, go rockin', mate.
Giddy. Oh, thanks, Quagmire. Quagmire. Emma Webb, hello. Hope all the sun makes us feel good. No, it makes us feel hot, love. 'Tis nice. The mental health benefits of good weather. Yes, and take lots of vitamin D. I take tons of vitamin D because you damn well need it. We got so many people on, but without further ado, it's going to look like Celebrity Squares. Well, take out the word celebrity. Just going to look like squares. Are you the Queen of Northwest London? The Queen of all things theatre. It was a mistake taking the splint off. It's only lovely Demisa.
Good morning.
Lovely Demisa. How you doing?
Hot.
I know.
No, we know that. But what about the weather?
Say, don't say anything.
Leslie, when do you start at Hooters?
You know, that's exactly what I thought. Do they employ senior citizens?
They must, because there will be a requirement. You've upset Neil now.
He's gone now.
You've upset him now. You've upset him. He's so busy. He's actually gone off to Hooters. It hasn't even opened yet. He's standing outside the door.
What? But mine are real, and the women in Hooters, I think they're silicone.
No, they're all real. They're real.
No, how? Oh, I suppose
I have done an investigative research exhaustingly. God. No, I haven't. I'd never go. I don't.
No.
Do you know something? For all the mucking about, and you've known me forever, and I'm not exactly shy in that department. I don't
No.
like things like that. I get very,
No.
very uncomfortable. I don't go to strip clubs. Never enjoyed it. It's not me. I love women, but I don't like that. Very uncomfortable. Very
I-
uncomfortable.
Do you know what? It sounds
Get
horrible to
embarrassed.
say it. I'm glad it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, it really does.
I suppose I don't see anything wrong with it because some
They're making a
people
fortune.
need
The girls. I have a pal who, and other guests will be on in a minute. I have a pal who has had, they call them table dancing, don't they? Whatever. Tons of those clubs. That's his business, and he used to have every single nightclub that's ever famous. He used to own. In real life, very quiet, very charming, very erudite guy. So we got Pally, and he said to me, "Oh, we'll go out for the evening." So we had a very nice dinner. Went Chinese in Chinatown in Soho, and then he said, "Oh, we'll go and see some of the clubs." And I was dying of embarrassment. I just hated it. I really felt, and he runs. So I said to him in my naivety, I won't say his name. I said, how do you find all these girls? It must be difficult. He said, difficult? He says, I have 1,000 applications a week.
Wow.
1,000. And I said,
Can I tell my strip club story?
In 1 second. Was that when you were in the Chippendales? Because you were
no, I wasn't actually a stripper, apart from walls. My friend
disappointed Leslie.
My friend used to be a band booker, and he worked at a pub that was half venue and half strip club.
Oh, okay.
And I used to go and see him, and I would just talk to some of the girls, and they were really, really cool. But all the men in the strip club are vying for the girls' attention, and I was surrounded by the girls. Do you know how I did it?
You're a love magnet. Be honest.
No, do you know how I did it? I told them I was gay, and they were so fascinated. I was surrounded by all these beautiful women, and all the men.
How did that relationship with Terry work out?
Huh?
So how did the relationship with Terry the barman work out?
I didn't have a relationship with anyone in there, but all the men in the club thought I did because the girls were surrounding me. And,
the girls make, in case you think,
they were really angry.
Poor old girls. I know it's a whole issue, but some of the girls are making 3, 4, 5 grand a week. Easy.
It's possible.
Easy. That's what they want to do. And when you speak to them, what is fascinating, when you speak to them, because they kept coming up because he was the boss, etc. They're not only articulate, they're really smart. You know, some of them are medical students, some of them, they're not what you think. They're thinking, wait a minute, I need to get through medical school, or I need to get through law school, or I need to do these things. How am I going to make, £500 a week, let alone 3, 4, 5,000?
All the girls I met were intelligent and lovely. There
you go.
Wasn't a big deal.
There you go.
Human beings,
the only thing I would say, and this, although it's men's radio station, we're not blokey. It's the one thing I promise we don't do sport. We don't do any of that. It's about mental health and well-being. Everyone says, well, they're coerced. They're not. Whether you agree with it or not, it's, I don't get it, because I'm going to be very blunt. We're all over 21 here, right? You're not going to have sex with these girls. You're not allowed to physically even touch them.
Nope.
I don't see the point. To me, I don't get it, but they're hugely popular, and bless them. What the hell?
I didn't meet anyone that was coerced at all.
Oh, here we go. Coming in from America. I performed a wedding, and he doesn't talk like that. I just suddenly thought I was in North Carolina. I performed a wedding for a couple in Edmonton. That's not Edmonton where Nicky Horn and I used to hang out. That's Edmonton, Alberta. I was invited to a strip club by the groom before the wedding. I respectfully declined. Oh, Asa, God, you're not going to enjoy London.
I am.
There she is, gorgeous Leslie.
I just saw that from Franny. Thank you, Franny.
And Elizabeth, if you got it, flaunt it. Well, I like to. I don't know about that. Right.
So when you're ready, can I share the amazing guest that we've got on the show today, as well as the lovely Leslie?
Absolutely, you carry on.
We're going to be talking to Helen Snape in just a moment. We had a lovely lady on actually last week, Karen, who was talking about recovering from narcissistic abuse, and I invited her back on the show today because we're going to talk to Helen Snape, who is, in her own words, we bring her on in a sec, a reformed people pleaser, and she now has but she experienced a relationship not dissimilar to that. So she's going to tell us, first of all, how she got out of it, and then this wonderful body of work that she's putting out into the world to help other people. And then we've got, because you remember you said you wanted to learn a little bit more about the tapping emotional freedom technique.
I do.
We've actually got a lady on this afternoon as well, a lady called Aga, who is going to tell us all about that. She's actually involved in humanitarian work.
Did you just say Aga do?
No, I'm not going to say Aga do. No.
I thought that's what you just said. I got a lady.
I try and bring it back in line. I try and bring it as sensible. Every time, Mr. Kane, push pineapple, shake a tree, and you know where you can put that in your pipe and do whatever with it. But she's
I
actually
am on
involved
so many drugs.
She's on doing humanitarian work at the moment, so she's actually carved some time.
Oh, she's phoning from God knows where.
From Poland. So she's going to speak to us today. And then we've got the lovely Karen back on.
Now, does Karen want to be on air? I mean, does she want to be sitting in the corner, like, you know?
I'm sure we can bring
I
her in
don't
the
know.
room.
I'm sitting in
You're not in the corner. You're not in the corner.
I am in the bloody corner. It's men. I'm in the corner.
What's
And
the name
don't
of the
blame
station?
the drugs.
What's the name of the station? What is the name of it? Is it called Leslie
I know, I'm the
Demeter
token woman.
Radio Limited?
Our three guests are female today, Leslie.
They're all women. All our
I
guests
know.
are female.
Thank you for that, Neil. Thank you for that, Neil.
God, I can't bear it. I'm going to bring on Professor Severus's Snape's sister. That's all there is to it. There she is.
Helen, how are you?
Oh my God! Hello. Hello.
I met this one.
Hi,
If I can just introduce everyone, Helen Snape, relationship coach.
Right.
I met her on my travels.
Not at Hooters. Please tell me not. That would be bloody embarrassing.
What?
Nothing.
Okay. In the world of personal development, and we met and we started talking. I've interviewed Helen about this a couple of times, and I was just intrigued, Helen, by your work. So, I mean, as much or as little as you're comfortable with, share your story. How did you get out of what you wanted to get out of, and then how did you get into what you wanted to get into and doing now? Because you're doing a lot of brilliant things. So please go ahead and share.
Well, very briefly, yeah, I was in a psychologically and emotionally abusive marriage for a very, very long time. And yeah, how I got out of it, I think it was initially actually my mother having the diagnosis of cancer that I think just really shook me up. And it was just that kind of moment of, oh my God, like life is short, life is precious. And like, and is this it? Like, am I just meant to be miserable my whole life and trying to run around, making my husband happy and just trying harder and harder and harder, and it really never working? Which will never work with a narcissist, will it? It will never work. No, it was like banging my head against a brick wall. Yeah. And I got to the point of realizing, do you know what? If I stay in this marriage, I'm going to have a complete breakdown. And then, like, I'm going to be no good for anyone, like, let alone. Did you have kids, Helen, in this marriage? No. My husband. That's a mercy. I know. My husband did want kids, to have children, and I didn't. And I kind of think that was probably kind of some self-protection at an unconscious level, because if we'd have brought children into the world, well, it would have been hideous. So you had a sense for a while that things weren't right, I guess, and this, and this was the impetus to go right. This was the wake up moment. So obviously a difficult thing to get out of, but you did it. How did you do it? And then how did you bring this wonderful body of work into the world? So we're in the middle question now. How did you do it? I first of all went and found a therapist, and that was just super helpful because they validated, how I was feeling and my reality. And, I finally felt like actually here's somebody that I could talk to, because I was cut off from my family and my friends, and there was basically like no one that I felt I could talk to up until that point. And you've been deliberately cut off by him, right? Well, yeah, I mean, he did it in a very kind of subtle way. He'd gradually, pick arguments with things that my family had said, or he'd take issues with things that my friends had said. And so he very cleverly, gradually just drew us apart. I was sort of a little bit criticized when I said about a very famous wedding a few years ago, when I had alarm bells ringing, and I said, who has a wedding and the only guest they invite is their mother, who sits on her own, and other people that they're sort of paid for to turn up who they hardly know? And I thought, yeah, that's how you get control, because you get rid of everybody else in that person's life. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, because kind of become dependent on them, and and they're trying to shape your reality all the time. Like yeah.
Anyway, they're all happy in California and Montecito, so good luck to them.
But I love the way you use the phrase shape your reality, because now you're well and truly shaping your own. You're not trying to be a star in someone else's messed up movie. You're actually the star in your own now. And I've seen your work. I've seen you when you bust your moves and do the dancing on Facebook, and I'm like, go girl! You should see it. She's quite something. Friday afternoons, you got to watch
Hang on a minute.
Helen shaking the booty. It's brilliant.
Helen, can I just
The joy
wind this?
level in your life seems to be so much higher now, which is the most important
Well,
thing.
she's with us. Helen, can I wind this back a little bit? And I have a rule. Oh, God. I have a rule on men's radio. If you don't want to answer it, please don't. It's not the BBC. It's not an inquisition. You know, it's a conversation. So in this toxic relationship, what were the sort of thing? Because I think people listening and watching all over the world, and hi to everybody on Deluxe Radio, 70,000 of you listening at the moment, taking our stream.
Actually, should we bring in Karen now, because she will have a comment on this?
We can do, but I think you'll find I'm producing. Of course we can. Helen, what I wanted to know is what sort of, where is Karen? There's our Karen. There we are.
Hi.
Right. Christ, with my eyesight, I'm having difficulty seeing anybody. What was the sort of things that would happen? Please, if you don't want to go through it, don't. But I mean, so many people, what I'm trying to get to is so that people can say, oh my God, that's what's happening to me. I want them to be able to not just relate,
Exactly.
to be able to identify.
And this is what Karen, just to give you the backstory, Helen, this is what Karen talked about in the last episode, which actually made me think of you. Let's get Helen on. So that's how this all happened. So really good to bring Karen in at this point, because she had a load to say on it.
Yeah, for sure. So I suppose some of the things that happened were, you know, first of all, there was that isolation piece, like cutting me off from family and friends. Then there was just
can I I'm so sorry, I really want to just dig a little deeper, if I may, Helen, because people might be saying, and I'm not being difficult, but people might be saying, well, why did you let that happen? If it's your friends, why don't you just say, well, sod off, I'm seeing, you know, Susan tomorrow and we're going out for a drink.
Why is it? I think I know the answer, but why is it so hard for the benefit of those that would go, well, it's just easy, just do that? Why is it not that easy?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, but you know, some of it was just circumstances and timing, because I got married like straight after university. So most of my friends were at university. This was in the days before the internet, and we all went our separate ways. So it was kind of harder to keep in touch with people anyway. And then, you know, and I guess like I was so caught up. I was so like blindly in love, right? I was young, I was in love. And I just thought the way that life worked was, you know, I should just be making my husband happy. And so when he started to take issue with other people, I felt like, well, I have to choose. Like I have to choose, either I choose my husband, you know, who I've made vows to and I'm madly in love with, although, you know, I now realize that was, you know, a trauma bond, and that's why it was so intense. Or I just create a huge problem, because, you know, if I say, yeah, okay, well, sod you, I'm going to go out with my friends, or actually, no, I'm going to go and see my family, he'd have made my life hell.
Right.
Like he was very subtle about what he did. Like, you know, he would probably, maybe he wouldn't even say anything about it, but say the next day he'd get angry about something completely different. Like, I don't know, it would be something as simple as, oh, you've moved where the soap is.
Jesus.
And for some reason this would have ruined his day, and therefore like he's going to ruin mine.
Now here's a great question coming in fact, from my cousin. Well, she's more like my sister, but we actually just cousins. And it's this from Franny. Did he see his own friends? Good question, Fran.
Very good question.
Yes, he did. Yes, because to everyone else, like he just kept, I mean, he was very intelligent. He was incredibly charming.
Always. It's always that, isn't it?
So he had friends, and we had his friends over, and I just didn't do much talking.
Did you like them? Were they nice to you, or were you just isolated and think, what the hell am I doing? Yeah.
Another good question.
There was a mixture. Like some of them I did like, but I guess I couldn't join in some of the conversations just because of what they were talking about. Like sometimes they'd be quite kind of geeky about talking about things that they're interested in work-wise.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I suppose looking back, I know that, the conversation, there was very little attempt to draw me in.
What would have
Yeah.
happened if you said, whatever your husband's name is, we call him, it doesn't matter. We'd say, look, we've had XYZ over yesterday or last week for dinner. What about if so and so comes over? What would have happened then?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I just wouldn't have thought of suggesting it.
Yeah.
I just
It's so
wouldn't have.
what I got to tell you something, Helen.
so
My
under the thumb by
stomach
that
is
point, yeah.
completely knotted up. I'm listening to you, thinking of what you went through. And so many people go through this that I know it doesn't
Well,
help.
it's so important
But
that
it's
we talk about this and
really
get you on
making
board.
me tense just listening to this horrible. It's one of those American movies, isn't it? Because the husband's always exceptionally charming. They're usually good looking. They're vivacious, and I bet everyone says, "Oh, Helen, you're so lucky because Terry." I don't know what his name
I'm reminded of that film with Patrick Bergin, Sleeping with the Enemy.
Sleeping with the Enemy.
Mm.
Sleeping with the Enemy, yeah, with Julia Roberts.
So, which was a great film and sort of sums this stuff up quite well as well.
When she went and the whole audience, when she'd escaped and then he found her and he broke into the bathroom and rearranged the towels, and in the cinema the whole audience went and I went, yeah, that's the right thing to do. That's what I do. My towels have to be like that. I didn't quite get the point. There you go.
So you found a wonderful therapist, Helen.
I did, and I decided that the only way that I could leave was to basically literally pack my bags one day and leave, and that is what I did. And and it's been no turning back.
Fast forward now, tell us about this wonderful work that you're putting out into the world, because you've won awards, haven't you? I've seen awards on Facebook. Feel free to big yourself right up, because you are our esteemed guest, and plug yourself shamelessly, because I want you to get more work out of this if it's possible. Because I think you are so cool. I think you are so cool.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. No, I was recently awarded Confidence Coach / Mentor of the Year.
Wow.
I know. Yeah.
Well
really, yeah, it was really touching. So I suppose what I've really focused on is helping other people that are in a similar position to me as I was like 7 years ago now. When I suppose coming out of that relationship, I realized that I'd been driven all of my life by the disease to please. This is why I call myself.
Oh, that's so good. The disease to please. What a
recovered
terrific
people
phrase.
pleaser. Mm.
Yeah. And because when I kind of realized that was me, I also realized I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to do anything differently. This is what I know. And so began, a long journey, self-help books, coaching, therapy, body work, you name it.
Best book that you
body
read.
work. Whoa, stop. What does that mean?
It means so somatic work. So
what work?
Getting in somatic, it just means of the body, basically. So it's things like getting in touch with your feelings that are in your body. It's things like
Helen, what does that mean? I'm really confused. What does that mean?
So
getting in touch with your feelings that are in your body. I don't understand that.
Those things stored in the body.
Yeah, like when you
issues in your tissues, if you like.
Well, when you feel something, that you feel it because of bodily sensations, except we're often so in our heads we don't realize it. So for example, when you're feeling angry, you might notice that your heart beats faster, that you're getting red in your face, except we often just ignore those cues.
Yeah. Okay.
So our emotions.
Actually, our next guest, Russ, is going to unpack this beautifully. Actually, I can see her commenting now. She says somatic means in your body. Emotions are stored in your body. Are you familiar with the emotion code, Bradley Nelson? That kind of work?
Absolutely no idea. Never heard of it.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I don't know.
I expect you are, Helen.
Yeah. So that's kind of one element of it.
So everybody wants to know, especially all our American viewers and listeners, and in Mill Hill, are you happy now? Have you found happiness now?
I have. I'm now in a healthy relationship. I'm now doing.
And what's your partner's name?
Neil.
Oh, it's you too. I didn't realise.
It's not me. It's not me. But
now it all makes sense. It all makes sense. You're dragging
It's
on
not
your
me.
girlfriend. Yeah, says you.
No, Helen is my friend. We are not dating, but her,
No.
her
Okay.
partner is, has
Well,
the
you
coolest
missed
name
out
in the
there,
world.
boy. I may say.
So, and how long did this journey to say no and sort of, to, if you like, if I can use the phrase, to give you back to yourself? How long was this process for you, do you think?
Oh God. Well, I would say it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Really, really
Depends.
is.
Yeah.
Just like I just get a bit braver each time. To begin with, it was about learning to say no to in the easier areas of life, right? So I started off with, when the checkout assistant in a shop offers you an email receipt and they ask you for your email address, like I used to just say, oh yes, okay, here's my email address, even though I didn't want those emails.
No.
But I couldn't bear like that awkwardness, and also
Yes.
like the yes would just come out of my mouth before I'd even realized it.
Mm.
And so it was beginning to learn to slow down and pause. And so actually, like I can say, well, no, thank you. I don't want that.
Mm.
And then realize, oh my God, actually, like the world isn't going to end if I say no.
And she and the thing is, Helen, in those situations, 10 seconds later, she doesn't know you. She's not going to remember you. It's irrelevant.
I know.
It's absolutely irrelevant, isn't it?
It
It
really
doesn't matter.
is.
It just
But it's
doesn't
an
matter.
incredible amount of conditioning, I suppose, to overcome. And you are an absolute shining example, Helen. I'm a big fan of your work. So what's the latest thing you're doing? Your private clients, seminars, workshops? What's going on in your world at the moment?
Oh, yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, I was giving a talk to a group of sixth formers about what a healthy relationship is, talking
Fantastic.
a bit about my story, like, this is what an unhealthy relationship is. So please learn from my mistakes. And this is what a healthy relationship looks like. So I absolutely love that and kind of look forward
Now,
to doing more.
Helen, what you won't know is that Leslie, who I've known for, I'm not going to tell you how long, is, and actually, apart from being fabulous all round, is an educationalist. And we've often had conversations about, oh dear, Timmy, you bitch.
Yeah.
What a bitch. Right, I can say that, I know him. I said it. But she's an educationalist. And here's the thing. We've often said, why in schools do you teach trigonometry, unless you're going to be an engineer, equations, all the things that I have never used ever since I was 15, 16, never. Why not have people like yourself? It is so important. These are life skills. And I'm going to call them children. I'm fed up with all this student crap. They're children, right? They're children. And at least give them a fair chance of somebody like yourself coming in and saying, this is what a terrible, you're going to grow up. You will be having relationships.
Mm.
Yeah.
By
We
the
were never
same
taught any-
token, getting other people in, I'm sorry, it's a real beef with me, but it's all part of mental health. This is how you do a household budget. This is how you do a bank account.
Yeah.
This is how you do basic budgeting of, like, I'm earning this, I'm going to pay. All the things that will stop you getting into terrible trouble and end up being like Timmy Ward.
Because if you think about it, the whole education I had, even though I had a so-called posh one, it was all based on the kind of paradigm of reward and punishment. If you do this, you do well, and if you don't, you won't do well. And do as you're told. And that might be a bit useful to keep kids under control, but taking into your adult life, it really is not. And we were taught nothing about relationships, nothing on pleasure, intimacy, communication, consent, none of it.
That was all crap.
I think
Communication.
here,
And look at, I've got to, can
I
I take,
really-
sorry, go on, Leslie, go on.
here we need to. Yeah. I mean, there is a subject area which I'm quite sure Helen will know about, called PSHE. Now, PSHE, Personal Social Health Education, statutory to an extent, but teachers don't receive any training anymore. They used to back in the early 90s when there was money around from government to train teachers, but they're expected to deliver this sort of thing without training. But not all schools will do it. Not all schools will make time. Some have a drop-down day, maybe 3 times a year, where they invite someone in, as opposed to a sustained.
Yes.
It's not because I'm going to get political, but successive governments have said what's really important is exam results. I disagree with that hugely.
They're not.
You know, you don't need to not be able to look things up in real life. If you don't know, you can look it up. So exams as they are now are just a waste of bloody time. They don't test anything except memory. They don't test your skills, your attitudes, and so on. And what Helen is saying is absolutely spot on. But I think we also have to realize, and Helen, I don't know, and I don't want to know whether you charge or not for going into schools, but schools don't have the budgets always to have people in who know what they're talking about to speak to the young people. I must stop now because I'll get very angry.
No,
Did the talk go successfully, huh?
It did, yeah. And honestly, the children, they ask such great questions as well. Like they're so tuned in.
Yeah.
Pointed questions. Yeah. I think
No,
we underestimate their intelligence, don't we?
Not often I disagree. I'm not a people pleaser, as anyone will tell you, but Elizabeth Green in Manhattan, New York. Funny you talked about hughes earlier. This is how some women think of themselves, even though you said they're intelligent. I totally disagree with you. I really think that's utterly wrong.
Do you know,
Women don't
I've
think
been
of
to that
themselves.
Hooters. I've been to that Hooters in Nottingham.
Working, darling, or just as a visitor?
Like, no, it was a complete relief, because for some reason I'd got into my head that all the waitresses were going to be actually topless. So like it was actually a complete relief when I went in and they were actually wearing a top.
Of course they wear a top.
I've never actually been, so I can't comment.
It's not rude. Right. So, Karen, what do you think?
Learn more about? Sorry.
Well, I mean, I've actually given a talk in the school about narcissistic abuse, and it was really well received. And this was just prior to lockdown, and it was something that I was going to develop further. It is something that I'm sort of working on now. I think, as Helen says, it's absolutely essential for kids in schools to know about the red flags, and that, you know, these type of B cluster personalities do exist. And, you know, what do you do when you're able to identify these red flags? It's not just about seeing the red flags, it's knowing what to do and how to overcome it.
Couldn't agree more.
I think it's very important. Great, Helen. I think it's brilliant that you're doing this.
Yeah,
it's so important.
It's a wonderful body of work that you've got.
I just wish that schools, because that's where everybody's kind of formed, that's where your early views are formed, right? Yeah. This is coming in from Edinburgh, from Veronica. Leslie, with you on that. Proper life skills are what our children need. It's absolutely right. It's what they need.
Yeah.
I think, Russ, one other thing, though, that you mustn't forget, and I clearly remember my lovely mum used to say to me, darling, you must make sure when he gets home, you've got your makeup on, your hair is done, because she was from that generation. She was sadly, she was a people pleaser because of her upbringing. And we mustn't forget how home life is an influence. It's not just school, it's home as well. And that can so reinforce the negative stuff without parents meaning it to. They really, I don't think some parents deliberately hurt their children, but the majority don't. And I don't think we should forget that it's not, of course, schools count, but parents count too. And who educates parents? When they born, they don't come with a handbook.
There's no training. I remember every time I took any of my 4 kids home from hospital as babies, you know, you're putting them in the back of the car, you think, oh Jesus, now what? I got this for the next, God knows, Christ. That's when it's in the hospital, it's all cute, right? Yeah. And then suddenly, Helen,
where can people learn more about your work? Where can people go to find you? Where's your cyber home?
Easiest place is just my website, so it's helensnape.com. That's the easiest place to find me. But you're right about parents, actually, because, you know, quite often parents will say to me, oh, you know, I'm worried that I've passed on like my people pleasing tendencies to my children. You know, oh my God, what do I do? And I'm like, well, the place to start is working on yourself, because children absorb what you do and what they see you doing, rather than, you know, you can tell them the good stuff as much as you like, but they'll see what you actually do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we have tried. I know this is a theme I come back to time and time again, but we do have choices. I wanted to be the opposite of I adored my father in some ways, but I wanted to be the opposite with my own children as he was with me in every way. And I made that conscious decision. Now, whether it's right or wrong, who can say? But, you know, that's how it is. And I made that. I didn't want to have the, what's the phrase? Oh, Neil, help me out. The learned experience or the imprinted experience or whatever.
Conditioning.
The conditioning. I didn't want that. I deliberately, quite deliberately, went the opposite way because I wanted them to feel very loved, wanted, needed, and, you know,
And
and
empowered.
all the rest of it.
Yeah.
By the way, one thing, Leslie, you were talking about your mum, and this is, I can only say it on our own radio station here, which is this. It's so easy now to poo-poo how things were in the 50s and 60s. I'm not going to go back any further. It's so easy to go, oh, look at that, you know, the Dick Van Dyke Show and Mary Tyler Moore's looking fabulous and he comes home and dinner's ready, you know. And I grew up on all of that, and I thought, well, that's who wouldn't want to have Mary Tyler Moore looking fabulous when you get home from work? It was fantastic. Many people are very happy with that. It doesn't mean there's a disparity. They're very happy. There are many women who are very happy to be homemakers, and it's not a criticism, and it's not because they're dumb. That's the role that they choose and they want. They could do other things. And I think it is unfair because everyone is so critical of everybody. If that works for a relationship and a marriage, bless them. It's none of our business. If they're both in agreement on that.
Hey, Russ, shall we learn some EFT?
I would love to learn some EFT.
Helen, you're going to stick around for the rest of the show. You're very welcome to.
Yeah, I love EFT.
Okay, stay in the room as we bring on our next guest.
Where is our next? I haven't got a next guest here. Have I? Oh yes, I have. It's sneaking at the bottom of my. God, how do I do this? God knows. I don't know. No, I can't move my. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I didn't see you. I didn't see you sitting there. There we are. Look at this. The most guests we've ever had on one show.
Hi.
Is it Aga or Aga? How do we pronounce this? Sorry.
Aga. I can't hear the difference still, but
Aga.
yeah, either way is fine.
Really lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
A while ago, Russ, I was talking about EFT, and Russ said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, let's get someone on because I do know a little bit about the old tapping EFT, and I know the history of it, and I know the power of it. And I'd love you to teach a little bit while you're on here. As you know, as a mental health radio station, we can actually provide some tools for mental health live. But I've got to ask you this first. You're doing humanitarian work at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, I do actually. Yes.
Please tell us about this. Please tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, so just to give you, first of all, I just want to say I absolutely love the conversation. And Helen, well done for all the work that you do. And I'm sure all of you are doing great work, but just hearing that is so inspirational. And definitely going to school with all this would be just so good and so helpful. So just to give you a little bit of background of who I am and what I do, and that would make sense why I'm here in Poland doing what I'm doing. So by background, I'm a clinical nurse specialist, being in cancer care for the last 22 years. And I'm an educator. I'm also a therapist using a lot of different modalities. I'm a medical coach, NLP practitioner, and EFT practitioner. So I kind of mix and match a lot of skills together to really just simply say that I help people to reduce effectively manifestation of stress in their lives. So all of the aspects, so physically, mentally, emotionally, behaviorally, reducing those manifestations. And I do that by, teaching about the stress, how to recognize, and what are the consequences of living with stress for a long time, and not only the stress that we have now, but also the traumatic stress that we may have in the past, and that is affecting us now, and we may not even realize that. And also, what we know now that the consequences of trauma we may feel for 5 generations. So there's a lot of things that we need to be dealing with. when we're doing that. So what happened basically when the war broke out in Ukraine, I knew that I have skills that are very somatic. So that means we can work with the body directly without using cognition, so without using words and talking therapies. And we know the tools that will be really helpful. And because I've been hearing a lot from my friends in Poland, I'm Polish as well, just being living in UK for 17 years. I've been hearing a lot of messages that, we've got a lot of people coming, a lot of trauma is coming. Poland decided to integrate Ukrainian refugees into their communities and to the services. So we ended up with people taking a lot of people with a lot of stress and trauma and not knowing the language, not knowing techniques that may be helpful at that point of time. So I said, hold on a minute, I've got something here that will be really, really helpful. So I reached out to my hometown in Słupsk, in north of Poland, knowing that a lot of humanitarian work goes into the big centers in Poland. And I said, listen, I've got this model. It's brilliant. We can come and we can work with Ukrainian directly. But what we want to do, really, we want to go into the whole service provider. So all the teachers, all the mental health workers, social care workers, everyone who would at some point in their life has anything to do with refugees and people who are traumatized. So I'm here now and teaching everybody in my hometown. I've done about 600 people already from the schools, from little schools, preschools, secondary schools, mental health workers, everybody, firefighters, just you name it. And we learn
anyone can learn this. Anyone can learn the tapping. Even children can learn. Yeah. So tell us what is tapping. What is EFT? And then teach us some skills that we can use.
Okay. So emotional freedom technique, tapping, actually describes in its name what it is. So you're reducing the stress and emotional load out of our body, our mind, because clearly we know that now. I mean, if I ask you guys, when you stress, when would that manifest physically first? Where would you feel stress?
In the body.
That's the question. In the body, but whereabouts? I would normally feel like...
I think it's probably my shoulders.
Yeah, shoulders.
Shoulders?
I get my shoulders turn into steel.
Yeah, so the reason shoulder, I would feel when I get stressed, I feel this knot in the stomach, depending what I'm stressing about, or, like a big lump in my throat. That's quite often what I feel. So that's manifestation, that's physical manifestation. How about our heads when we mentally stress? When we stress, how we mentally get that, what we're thinking, what do I say about myself? How do I judge myself? All that stuff, right? And then emotionally, do I get anxieties? Do I get sadness? Do I get all sorts of things? And then what do I do? How do I behave? So when we stress, the worst thing that happened to us is we lose control, right? And then quite often when we stress is reduced, you can see that in children the most, they flip out, they get stressed, they say something, they do something, 5 minutes later, they're like, oh, I didn't mean that, I didn't want to do that, all that sort of thing.
It's because the front part of the prefrontal cortex actually is offline under stress, isn't it? And we're responding from the emotional kind of fight or flight center, aren't we?
So when
logic is shut down, isn't it? That's why we make bad decisions under stress.
Yeah. So when you think about it, it's very simple. I explained. So I also ran the project that works with probation services in the UK. So people who came out of a prison and that. So their biggest issue is actually that lost control. So I explained to many people the same way, like you just said. We've got very primitive brain that was there 5 million years ago, and that brain didn't need to think. We didn't have that prefrontal cortex there. Yeah, so we just needed to act from that, and there was a fight, flight, and freeze. We had 3 responses, right? Fight, flight, and freeze. So that's 3 responses.
Fight, flight, and what's the third one? Did you say freeze?
Freeze. So when we perceive something that is dangerous to us, when there is a stress, then we fight or flight. But when we actually think that something really is going to happen to us, then we freeze. Right. So this is really proper limbic system here. So what happens when we scavenging all the time, we're looking around for dangers all the time. This way of looking constantly around called neuroception. So we have that all the time switched on. And when we feel that something is dangerous, we send a signal straight from our amygdala. So that's our part of our brain that is our CEO, basically, that decide, okay, we have to be stressed or not. And then what it does is sends the signal into that prefrontal cortex, flip it open. It says, I don't need you anymore. I don't need you to think. Because, like 500 million years ago, We didn't have to think when the saber-toothed tiger was jumping at us. We didn't have a time to think how far it is, which direction comes on us, what it's going to do. Can we run this way? We didn't have to think about that. We didn't need to think about that. So we're still acting like that. We switch that off. That's how I explained it. We've got a primitive brain here and that prefrontal cortex. We need to switch that off in order to act safely to ourselves. So every time that we get stressed, that's what happens.
And it's almost like that society's evolved, but our brains haven't. So we're still operating on a very, very old operating system, and it needs kind of people like you are kind of upgrading us, if you know what I mean, to human being 2.0 possibly.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because we're running out of time.
Let's do some tapping. Okay, let's do some tapping.
Yeah, let's do some tapping.
Okay. So
and Timmy, that is not for you to be dancing around your kitchen, you silly old queen. Go on.
Well, you can do that. That's probably going to relax you as well.
No,
anyway,
he's been rude to Leslie.
Okay, no, so not. So what we should do first, the most important thing with using any somatic techniques is actually we need to tune into what we recognize as stress, right? If we are not stressed at all at this point of time, okay, if we don't feel stress anywhere in our heads, in our body, we don't feel any anxieties, any sadness, then best thing to do is actually think about something that was stressful to us last week or week before, whatever, any stressful experience that we have. Right? And if we can do that for a moment, we can remember how did it feel to us, where did it feel in our body, whether that was that knot in the stomach or that raised shoulders or bit headaches and stuff like that. If we can do that and then kind of imagine scale between 0 to 10 and put that experience that we have. 0 is when I think about that situation from last week that was really stressed, I don't feel anything physically or emotionally. When I'm 10, that out of scale, I'm having a panic attack, right? So if we all can do that for a second, so think about a stressful situation. If you're experiencing stress right now, where does it feel in your body, right? And put that on the scale. Yeah, so we have that 0 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
Ras, do you have that? Or yeah, we have that? Okay.
No, I can't get it.
You completely chilled now, are you?
No, I tell you what. Do you know what it is? This. I don't want to take it. It's about you, not about me. You carry on. Don't worry about me. Go on.
Okay.
Go on.
Do you have any physical pain right now?
Yeah, just a bit. Yes.
Okay, right. If you do,
yes.
That's really well. It's not good, but that's another thing.
Don't tell me it's really good because it ain't.
For the purpose of
EFT
this
can work on physical pain too.
All
okay,
right. I tell you
does,
what. All right,
yes.
very quickly in 3 seconds. Right. The reason I'm not feeling any stress is because all I can feel is this, which is killing me 24 hours a day. Right.
Good.
And so is this. So
so
mentally,
Russ,
yeah. Go on.
Mm-hmm. If you put that pain, so remember when we stress, the pain we experience pain a little bit more. So I don't know if you know, but the chronic pain in UK, the first line of treatment is no longer medication. We actually do stress reduction technique to start from. But anyway, let's move from that 0 to 10. That pain you have in your hand, just in your mind, put it on that scale, and then you can tap on that. Okay, so you can't tap on the side of the hand, but anyone else can. Yeah.
No, I can't tap on this.
No, that's what I'm saying. So you don't do that, but everyone else can do that with us. Okay, if you tap on the side of the hand and tune into that, you don't tap Russ on the side of the hand. You tap straight on the collarbone like this. With one hand is okay, on the collarbone. Just one hand, Russ, it's fine for you. Yeah, and for the rest of us. And take a deep breath. In and out. Okay, and just say it out loud. Or if you're on the microphone, then don't, in your hand. And what we do, in your head, what you do, just say, even though I've got this stress in my, whatever that is for you, in your head, in your shoulders, I accept this is how I feel right now. Even though I've got this stress in my body and it's put the number of your scale, 10 out of 10, 7 out of 10. I accept this is how I feel. Even though I'm really stressing right now, I accept this is how I feel. And then start tapping at the beginning of your eyebrow. 1 hand, 2 fingers, right at the beginning of your eyebrow. And just keep breathing. And this is the reminder phrase that we use in here, and we say, there's stress. Next point is on the side of your eye, distress. The next one is under your eye, distress in my part of your body that you're stressing in. Under the nose, distress in my body. Now you can even name it what I'm stressing about. So go on the chin is your next point, and there's a distress about whatever you're stressing about. Next point is on your collarbone, just on your collarbone. This stress that I'm experiencing right now. Next point is under your armpit. And you keep continuing in your head, this stress about, this stress, put the number, and right on the top of the head, that's the last tapping point, this stress. And take a deep breath, stop tapping. In and out. In and out. And then what you do, you measure it again. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, sometimes stays the same. You just continue until it reduces a little bit. So that's in a nutshell, that's what we do for at least,
I've seen some
rounds.
real miracles. I've seen some real, what you would call miracles with this work. I've seen people who've had chronic pain for years going, oh my God, it doesn't hurt anymore. I mean, sometimes it can be very subtle, but I do want to point out, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen Gary Craig was a big pioneer of EFT, wasn't he? Gary Craig's a very well-known name in the area, and he would do this tapping, and people would go, "Oh my God, my arm doesn't hurt anymore. That's hurt for the last 20 years. How did you do that?" And it's really just release. It's releasing stuck energy, because these are acupuncture points, aren't they? So this is really based on Eastern thought, isn't it? A movement of energy in the body and chi and flow and all that sort of stuff.
So I would say I come from the very scientific background, and I'm coming because I'm working in the hospital. I'm teaching this in the hospital. I see it. Yes, we do use acupoints, but what we do, we reduce a lot of biological aspects here. So we reduce cortisol, reduce adrenaline, we reduce testosterone. So we're really doing all the hormones that really flashing you out when you stress, and that's why you feel more pain. That's why you have more menopausal symptoms. That's why you're losing control, because you flashed with all these chemicals in your body. So what you do by doing the tapping, you're reducing that. You send the signal directly into your parts of the brain, which is called amygdala. And that's the one, that's your CEO of sending the signal to the rest of your body saying, now you have to fight, you have to flight, or you have to freeze. So ultimately you're confusing your body, saying you feel stress, but you're okay, you're safe.
Got it. Fascinating stuff.
By Jove.
Yeah.
I saw it once working when we had the studio pre-pandemic, because Phil Dave, terrified of wasps, he's got a thing, absolutely terrified of wasps, got a real thing about it. And did some tapping, and he felt completely different. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It was
I think the mantra is try it on everything. I think Gary Craig coined that. Try it on everything. But
so
I
how
love
do you
the
feel
way
now? So Leslie, has anything happened? I'm really curious.
Yeah.
Anything?
Absolutely, because I was thinking
Wow.
about the stress in the back of my neck and my shoulders, and it's lessened.
Yeah.
I love
what about let's go through our guests and Karen.
Okay.
What about you?
Yes,
Anything?
I was thinking about an incident, and at the end, when I thought about it again, the trigger aspect of it had really died down quite a lot, and I was pretty amazed. And I thought, how can this happen
You
in
guys
such
are
a
so
short time?
lucky. I don't think I'm from this planet. Helen, what about you?
Yeah, I was thinking about some tension in my shoulders, and it's lessened. Love it.
Yeah, and I felt a shift. And what I was going to say, Argo, I love the way you've brought the Western thought into it as well. So the biochemistry of the brain and the hormones, and the you've blended Western and Eastern beautifully there. That's just genius.
Absolutely, and when you think about EFT, it's very well researched now, and it's researched with the Western science. So we need to think about the fourth wave of psychotherapy. We're using elements of mindfulness in here, but also cognitive behavior therapies. We're shifting the behaviors. We're also using elements of exposure. So what you're saying, Russ, that's the exposure element. EFT initially was used on phobias, and that's where it was developed first. right? And now expand to so much more, to anxieties, PTSD, working with trauma, working with food cravings, working with so many different aspects. Because what we do, the common denominator in all this is stress reduction. And that's how we need to look at it, is a self-help tool for stress reduction when we're using, like we did just now. When we work as a therapeutic intervention, you know, when you think about where that amygdala sits, it sits next to hippocampus, and that's where we store memories. So when we stimulate that, okay, we stimulate the hippocampus, and quite often we work exactly on the memory. So it's very useful for trauma work, for anything to do with the past experiences. So if someone's got a lot of phobias or a lot of trauma, let's say public speaking, you know, you feel that anxiety, you don't know where it's coming from, you taught yourself everything's going to be okay, no one's going to criticize you, you still feel it and you don't know why. It is probably because when you were younger, you had experience when you felt ashamed, felt criticized, and every time your body is bringing that back together, because it sits in your body, it sits in the protein, the memory sits in the protein, and the memory sits in hippocampus, and that's why we feel physically. We can't talk ourselves out of it. We have to work with our bodies to reduce that reaction.
No, Arga, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question that's got nothing to do with this. But
Okay.
You're in Poland, right?
Yes.
At the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's the mood in Poland? You've already mentioned Ukraine.
Yeah.
And here in Britain, we keep, you know, it's horrible. How's the mood in Poland?
Fearful, impatient, fed up,
Yeah.
and it's kind of, you know, in the limbo. We're not sure what's going to happen, how long we need to do what we do. A lot of Ukrainian people is coming back into Ukrainian right now, so we see that shift. A lot of people is just hanging,
Sorry,
so they don't
going
want
back
to.
into the Ukraine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people do. So there is kind of, you know, a lot of people wait. They don't want to engage too much. They don't want to look for work because they're kind of in limbo, thinking that it's going to finish next week. So it's really difficult to manage this. But as I said before, we integrating and assimilating whole society into our systems. So it's not like we have people in the camps and we go and help them. We take them home. We take them into our schools. So we in Poland, a lot of system has to become really emotionally resilient. So we need to be able to regulate children in the schools. We need to be able to pick up the trauma in every single conversations with people. You know, a lot of people took Ukrainian into their homes, and that creates risks as well to Polish society. So we need to be really careful of how we managing and how we creating safe environment for them and ourselves as well.
Now, being a Londoner, I've got very, very quickly in 3 minutes. Is Ukrainian way of life and Polish way of life pretty similar, or not similar at all? Are there big differences?
In some ways, yes. Where I operate and the aspects that I kind of leading and being in is a mental health. So that is a big difference, actually. So it's difficult to support and offer mental health services to Ukrainian refugees.
Isn't that fascinating? It's such a British thing. We just think, oh, well, it's Europe.
Yes.
It'll be all right.
Yes.
No, it's not.
No.
It's not.
And this is and this is why I didn't go and say I'm going to go and work with Ukrainian refugees only. I knew I have to go and equip Polish society for them then to help on the, you know, basic level. So it's first.
No,
I think what you're doing is incredible work.
I have to make an apology to Leslie, because Leslie was here to talk about theatre. But you're going to come. Will it save till next week? Because I don't want. I'm not giving you the bum's rush. I refuse to give you the bum's rush. And such an amazing array of guests, all down to Neil, by the way. Nothing to do with me whatsoever.
Well, we had to bring the lovely Karen back in, because just the conversation we had the other day.
Oh my God!
Just wanted Karen in the room.
I know.
Helen, thank you. Olga, your work I think is just extraordinary and so well thought through from all the points of view. And it's Can I say something which is important? You know, we look at Arga and we say, that's what a hero looks like. That's brave and it's fantastic. But I also want to say, I look at somebody like Helen and Karen and your heroes as well. Not everybody can be in a frontline war zone. You know, sometimes a war zone is somebody's living room and you don't know the hell they're going through. So, you know, let's bring it down. I would like to bring everything down to the really human level. You're all heroes.
Apart from Tim.
agakahindi.com. How do I pronounce it?
Yes, agakahinde.com. Yes.
agakahinde.com.
Yeah.
Brilliant. If
You're
people want to
braver
learn
than
more
me,
about
Neil.
your work.
Tell you
Thank
that.
you.
Listen,
you.
everybody,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much. What a week it's been. Next week, changes, all sorts of fun and games, huge guests, lots of fun, lots of sadness. Who knows? Anyway, until then, have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you bright and breezy Monday at 12. Until then, bless you, everybody. Thanks
Happy
so much.
weekend,
Stay
everybody.
safe.